Welcome to Cakes and More, your channel for beginners in baking. My previous video was about basic baking ingredients. Today's video is about common questions about basic baking ingredients. I hope you'll find this helpful. You can also check one of my previous videos, microwave FAQs. I'll give the link in the description box below the video. I'll be making more such videos. Please consider subscribing. It's a rather lengthy video. Let's get started. Baking powder and baking soda. Can I use baking powder in place of baking soda or baking soda in place of baking powder in a recipe? These are things which work differently, so you can't simply use one in place of the other unless of course you know what you're doing. Some recipes may have only baking powder, some recipes may have only baking soda, some of them may have both. So please use as given in the recipe. Why do I need to use aluminum-free baking powder? Your bakes will taste better. You will not get that metallic aftertaste in your mouth, especially in recipes where the quantity of baking powder is slightly more. So try and get aluminum-free baking powder. You can purchase this online. I've run out of baking soda. Can I use Eno instead? I've never really tried that, but a few of my baker friends have tried it successfully, so you can try that. But please do use the unflavored Eno, of course. And do leave a comment for me if you happen to try that. Can I use salted butter in place of unsalted butter in a recipe? Most recipes for sweet and savory bakes have salt as one of the ingredients in them. In sweet bakes, if the quantity of butter is very less, say about 2 to 3 tablespoons, like 30 to 40 grams of butter, then you can try using salted butter and skip adding the salt. But if the recipe has more of butter, then it might add up to more salt and make your bake taste salty. So it is best to use unsalted butter and add the salt given in the recipe. That will help you have better control over the quantity of salt you would be using in the recipe. Can I use homemade butter? Homemade butter tastes awesome, there's no doubt about that. But homemade butter may have varying content unlike the packaged variety, and this may not always work well in your bakes. So it is better to use packaged butter in your baking for better and more consistent results. Save the homemade butter for those parathas. Can I use ghee in place of butter in a recipe? Depends on the recipe. If the butter is melted and used in a recipe like bread, then it should work just fine. But in recipes like cakes and cookies where the butter and sugar are creamed together to introduce air bubbles, ghee may not work exactly the same way as butter. I would suggest to stick to whatever is given in the recipe for the best results. Can I use low-fat spreads or margarine instead of butter? These will not give the same good flavor as butter does, that's for sure, so better to avoid that. Margarine is not good for health, I've never really used it. Cocoa powder. Can I make cocoa powder at home? This probably is one of the most asked questions on my channel. No, you can't make cocoa powder at home, you'll have to buy it. Can I use drinking chocolate in place of cocoa powder? No, drinking chocolate is something different, so you can't really use it instead of cocoa in a recipe. Can I use cocoa powder in place of chocolate in a recipe? In any recipe, it is not possible to simply use cocoa in place of chocolate or chocolate in place of cocoa, because you are not going to be getting the same taste, the texture and the consistency by using one in place of the other. You will have to use whatever is given in the recipe for the best results. So if you have only cocoa powder at home, please do try a recipe which uses cocoa powder and so on. Can dark compound chocolate be used? Compound chocolate is not real chocolate, it's not good for health either. So please use good quality chocolate which is meant for baking. Cream. What is Amul cream? I use this very often in my recipes. Amul cream is dairy cream with 25% fat. You can try using any dairy cream with 25% fat or more, whatever is available to you. Can I use non-dairy soy-based whipping cream in place of Amul cream? You cannot use that non-dairy soy-based whipping cream in place of Amul. It is already sweetened. It doesn't taste the same as dairy cream, neither does it work the same way. It also tends to kind of split when heated, so it's best avoided. Please use dairy cream where specified. Can I use top of the milk cream? I prefer to use packaged cream as it is homogeneous and the results are consistent. This would not be possible with top of the milk cream. Packaged cream is also very convenient to use, of course. Can I use milk in place of cream? Milk and cream have very different consistencies and fat content, so the results will certainly not be the same if you swap one for the other, although this might work just fine in a recipe for a yeast bread. So please do not use milk in place of cream or cream in place of milk unless the recipe specifies that you can do so. Vanilla. Where can I get vanilla beans? You can buy good quality vanilla beans here in India. I'll be listing the sources in the description box below the video. But if you're looking for extraordinary stuff like Madagascar or bourbon, then you might want to get it from the USA or elsewhere. Is using vanilla beans or extract a must in a recipe? Ideally, these would be the best to use in any recipe. But if you do not have vanilla beans or extract, you can try using a small quantity of vanilla essence, but I do not really recommend it at all. I started baking with vanilla essence, but I stopped using it long ago since the time I discovered vanilla extract. Can I make vanilla extract without alcohol? I have read about making vanilla extract using food grade vegetable glycerin, though I am yet to try that. It may differ slightly from the alcohol based vanilla extract, but if you do not want to use alcohol, it is certainly worth a try. I plan to try that soon and I will let you know how it turns out. Chocolate. Can I melt dairy milk or Bournville chocolate? In any recipe for baking or dessert where the chocolate needs to be melted and used, I would suggest you use good quality chocolate meant for baking. Homemade yogurt. Fresh and thick homemade yogurt should work fine in most recipes, but some recipes may specify that you use full fat yogurt or sometimes even set curd, so please do follow recipe instructions. Same applies to milk. Please use full fat milk or whole milk where specified in the recipe, or you might have to compromise on the texture and taste. Sugar. I do not have brown sugar. Can I use regular white sugar or demerara sugar? If you do not have brown sugar at home, you can use normal white sugar, but your dessert or your bake will not have that caramel flavor. The sugar, which goes by the name of demerara sugar here in India, is very coarse. The crystals are huge and it might not dissolve fully. So you might feel that grittiness in your bake or dessert. So it is best to avoid it. Can I use powdered sugar instead of normal sugar in a recipe? Yes, you most certainly can in most recipes, but follow recipe instructions always. Eggs. Now this is another very frequently asked question. Can I use condensed milk or yogurt in place of egg in this recipe? This depends on what the egg is meant to be doing in this recipe, so you might not always be able to substitute successfully. So replacing the egg with condensed milk or yogurt may not always work. So please do not try to replace eggs in any recipe, it might not work. Play safe. Try a recipe which doesn't use eggs. Can I store orange or lime zest? You can try refrigerating the zest or even freezing it, but it will not be anywhere as good as the freshly grated stuff. Always use freshly grated orange or lime zest for the maximum zest and punch. Flour. Can I use wheat flour or millet flour instead of all-purpose flour in this recipe? You can use whole wheat flour instead of all-purpose flour, but wheat flour takes a little more liquid than all-purpose flour. So you might need to adjust the consistency. Also, the end product will be slightly more dense and not as light as the ones made with all-purpose flour. So if you have just started baking, it's a great idea to use all-purpose flour and then gradually move on to using whole grains. If you want to use whole grains, please use recipes which have been designed with these flours in mind. So these were a few common questions about baking ingredients. The moral of the story is plan ahead, stock up on the basic ingredients required for a recipe, and try to stick to whatever is given in the recipe for the best results. Changes may mean a different end product altogether, so be prepared for that. I hope this video was helpful. More common questions in baking coming up. Please subscribe and stay tuned.